Hi, I'm Wiz. Normally, I like to jump into the meat and potatoes of my videos because I want to put my content first and provide value for this community. But someone recently pushed me to be better, and that same person encouraged me to engage in what the kids are calling personal branding. And I can't grow without trying new things. Additionally, I feel like this has been a long time coming for my viewers who have been with me since I embarked on this journey, but who don't know much about me. So here goes. Taking the correct actions at the correct times is what some people describe as clutch. I call this catching lightning. Like the Link you see in most Zelda games, I'm left-handed, and my favorite color is green. This quality, not my affinity for green, boils down to an ability to engage in more right-brain creative thinking. I have a knack for seeing patterns in things that I believe are worth noting, and this inspires me to share my observations with you in the form of storytelling. Before we jump in, if you haven't seen my God Tribe video, I would highly suggest that you go and watch that video before this one in order to have an optimal understanding of what we'll be presenting here for you. Today I want to channel the spirit of the old Zelda forums from way back when. I want to attract the "I'm 14 and this is deep" crowd. This is because I was that 14-year-old, and I want to make videos for that younger me who thirsted for meaning outside of watching late-night anime on Toonami. Some of the information presented will not be originally from me like you've seen in my past videos, and we will take those ideas and try to expand upon them further. Some people would label this theory as crackpot. Others would call this heavy speculation.
Me, hello. This guy right here, he beat me to my own God's Tribe video. It's a hush-hush project that I've been writing for about 4 months with Aurelio and Benin, so I had to invite this guy to keep him quiet. Be on the lookout for it in the coming weeks. It's going to be the last part of the Ganondorf, Zelda, and Link trilogy.
If we don't directly mention someone in this video, our aim is to credit that individual or group of individuals in my video description. Mox can elaborate better on this one.
To be completely transparent here, many of us Zelda tubers are coming to the same conclusions because, well, that's how information works. Scientifically speaking, we all have the same games for the foundation of our ideas. No wonder so many people come to the same conclusions. It's actually a good thing for two separate individuals to come to the exact same conclusion without ever speaking, though us Z-tubers are always talking with each other. Thank you to Lorelian Historian for his translations and insights used throughout this video. They are invaluable to understand the finer details of the Legend of Zelda series as a whole.
LH, my liege, you know where I stand with you. But also, thank you. With all this said, let's begin. Let's call a spade a spade. We know why you're here. Some dude you've never heard about made a video about a familiar topic from the Zelda series that you're unfamiliar with, the God Tribe. What is the God Tribe? In my last video, I laid out my ideas to make distinctions from the subtext of the Japanese lore in Zelda games as best as I could. I now realize that I probably should have taken a bit more time to make an infographic for you. I will ration out the info piece by piece, so we can all be on the same page instead of two different books. But first, I want to provide some context. As the great Tim Rogers once stated, I believe no such thing exists as a perfect translation of one work of literature from one language to another. What Tim says leads us to the golden tenet of translations, which is that all translations require compromise. A great example of this would be this scene right here from Tim's video, breaking down just one line of translation from Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation. The top dialogue box you're seeing is the original Japanese. The bottom green box of words is the rough translation which was provided in the English version of the game. The middle text is what we could have interpreted the text to be, utilizing the most creative interpretation skills. As you can see when you compare these two interpretations of the text, there's a lot left to be desired. Many compromises were made in a time span of 2 weeks by just a single lonely translator, and it impacted a JRPG that many consider to be a classic, if not their favorite. It's up to the interpreter to decipher language as best as possible, given the context of the words being used in each line of text that they read. The Japanese language is inherently more efficient than the English language. The Japanese word for washing machine, for example, can be spoken with only 3 characters. Mechanism, wash, and laundry, whereas the same word in English requires 15 characters. In other words, that's a 500% inflation rate. I'm sure you know where this is going. Translating Japanese to English requires sophistication. To quote Tim Rogers a second time, these scraps of shrinkage can lead to reams of nuance lost over time. Another important fact to mention is that only 2 Japanese words are used to describe the goddesses and gods of Hyrule. The Japanese word used for goddess in the Zelda series is Megami, and the Japanese word expressed for god in the Zelda series is the word Kami. This is important to understand, because when you begin to understand the foundational differences of both languages, this is where the power of interpretation really comes in clutch, which again is something I like to call catching lightning. Shameless self-plug. When only 2 Japanese words are being used to describe all of the deities in the Zelda series, we have to use intuition and inference in order to tease the truth on how to make sense of this nuance. This will be important later on, but just remember this for now. Goddess, god, Kami. What I am trying to establish with these examples that I've provided is that while I may not understand the language that I am attempting to comprehend, I trust my source, Lorulian historian. My intention is to also demonstrate that I know enough about foreign languages to interpret and trust the subtext that I presented in my last video. We will continue to expand upon this knowledge with this video. Alright, so about those pesky gods and their hierarchy. First we have the creator goddesses, or as the Great Deku Tree refers to them in Ocarina of Time, the golden goddesses. These goddesses are the divine trio of Hyrule. They're the raw creative forces that led to its conception. If you see them on a crest, these figures are typically represented by the Triforce, the sacred relic which the 3 goddesses left in their wake when they created the known Zelda universe and ascended into the heavens. Din created the lands or earth, but also the form of all things in Hyrule. Think about the parable of the Christian god molding humanity from clay, and that's what Din contributed to the average Hylian. Another great example of this phenomenon are the Gorons, which are practically personified rocks. But Gorons would need more than the power of Din to exist, which is where the other 2 goddesses played a role. Nehru created the laws of Hyrule. This roughly translates to the physics of the Zelda world, or the rules that the land is bound by. If we are discussing that clay Hylian we just talked about, Nehru would be giving this chap a mind as well as a conscience, the inherent ability to discern between right and wrong. Last, but certainly not least, Faerore filled the land of Hyrule with life. Not only did she create life in the form contributed from Din with rules to abide by from Nehru, but she gave those Hylians their souls. Consequently, this gives us some takeaways.
Din is earth and body, Nehru is law, wisdom, spirit, mind, natural forces of the universe, and Faerore is the souls of the living and the dead. Correctly understanding how the goddesses created Hyrule is essential to understanding the principles of the Zeldaverse. Now, I'm not one to enjoy admitting I was wrong, but I was flat out wrong about my understanding of what Nehru created. One of the things I had previously believed was that Nehru created those who make the laws of the land, when, in reality, of course, the kanji clarifies this. Quote, her intelligence flowed into the earth, and she bestowed law to the world. So the way I understood the NOA translation, and most likely many others, is that Nehru made the laws that govern the whole land, including politics. I don't know why my smooth brain could not interpret this meaning in any other way, but the most literal sense. This kanji right here means act, method, law, rule, principle, model, system. So wait, it's settled, right? The language might mean something, Mox, until you take into account the context in which this kanji is used. If only I could read. So, I guess, according to the deliberation all night with both Wiz and Lorulian,
We deliberated all night, by the way.
This kanji means dharma, law. It's a Buddhist term. So basically, Nehru made the natural laws like gravity and physics, which had nothing to do with politics. The thing that kind of annoys me with myself here is that I could have likely derived this meaning from the context clues of the NOA translation. All the clues were there. I just was reading the statement way too literally.
In an effort to flip the script, I'll start at the bottom of the hierarchy of gods, where we can find the Hyruleans, also known as the Hylians. The Hyruleans were said to have descended from the gods. The crest of the Hylians is the Loftwing, the bird that represents the royal bloodline. The Hylians were said to be the race closest to the gods in earlier Zelda games. But as you can see, they're at the bottom of the hierarchy. They're still close to the gods. Here's how. Look at the first Zelda here. Now look at Basket here. Do you notice anything in particular? Both of them have long, pointy ears. These ears parallel the ears of this guy, who we've all agreed to call Richard. Thank you to Bandit Games and Monster Maze for attempting to proselytize this nickname. For the sake of not spoiling anyone and having a good laugh, I said Richard is a dragon, and I stand by that. The royal family represents the historically accurate imperial clan of ancient Japan, who was said to have descended from the bloodline of dragons, which were considered deities in those times. Okay, so when the goddesses departed from Hyrule's creation, they left a certain goddess in charge. That goddess's name was Hylia. Hylia is kind of like the Jesus figure of the gods. When the golden goddesses depart Hyrule, Hylia becomes the highest god in the godly hierarchy. She upholds and maintains the order left by the goddesses. She is also the leader of the god tribe. It is only when she sacrifices her divine form that she becomes like the people who were created in the image of the gods, much like how the god of Christianity shed his divinity to become Jesus, or how ancient dragons of Japanese folklore were able to transform into humans and even reproduce with those humans, leading to the real-life claim that the imperial clan descended from the dragons.
I don't think Wiz is necessarily wrong here either, because if Richard is a dragon, but also shows up in this form, then clearly there must be some shapeshifting going on. This isn't a new thing either. Let me take you way on back to 2006. Remember one of those first few cutscenes with Midna? She has multiple crazy abilities, including when she basically uses ascend ability through the gel cell bars. I know it's not vertical, it's horizontal, but I think my point still stands. I think this is the same magic. The main point of revisiting Midna's abilities in these cutscenes is because of the scene on the rooftops of the castle. Midna is still manipulating Link at this point, and shapeshifts into Hylia and Colin. In the midst of the story, this can kind of pass by some people, but I've been thinking about it nonstop for weeks. I think this is the biggest clue to how these beings can be both a human-like form and dragons. Shapeshifting was a quality of the Twilight. Another thing to take into consideration was that the Twilight did not have access to pure, radiant light. They lived in the Twilight realm. Twilight is different than darkness, as Quest with Aaron describes, and that's going to be linked in the description below. Also, Midna has feathers in her imp form. Yes, you heard me right. Midna has feathers. So, here are my unfiltered thoughts about this race. I think these beings can only turn into dragons under two conditions. One, they are physically in the light world. And two, they have reached spiritual enlightenment. Rinkunto has shared his thoughts around the Zonai and their enlightenment, and in light of this new footage, I speculate that spiritual enlightenment must be required to be a dragon.
This brings up the curious case of the Oocca, who Shad said were closest to the gods, and who created Hyrule. These creatures make no sense. They're the most technologically advanced civilization in Twilight Princess, yet, physiologically speaking, they have a popsicle's chance in hell at surviving out in the wild. They certainly didn't make it this far because of their biological fitness. This leads us to believe that there's something more to them, beyond appearing like anthropomorphic fertility goddess statues.
The Oocca could only appear to be titty chickens because maybe they are playing a prank on Link. The other thought I had is that the Sky People do not necessarily have to do anything anymore. Okay, imagine this. The titty chickens use robots to do some of their bidding. They use their big brains to establish dominion over the robots, and they control them with their spirit. This would be similar to how Link was able to control the statues in both Twilight Princess and in Wind Waker. Basically, it gives them a reason not to have arms. Like, how are these little titty chickens supposed to do anything? Like, how else would they build this city? I mean, any explanations here? That's the only one I could come up with is robots. They have to have robots, and they control the robots and build the city with the robots. Yeah.
Mox and I agreed that while the Oocca are close to the gods, they are not closest to the gods like Shad speculated. This led us to the conclusion that they could be engineers endowed with the godly powers of Faerore, the spirit magic of the Zonai. Regardless of what the Oocca are, it's hard to dismiss the similarities their technology and magic have with the Wind Tribe as well as the Zonai, leading us to believe that they are somehow all connected. Okay, now back to the hierarchy of the gods, specifically the Loftwing. At the top of the royal family is Zelda. Zelda is the reincarnation of Hylia. Hylia renounced her divinity in order to be able to use the Triforce, which cannot be used by the gods. Zelda is a reincarnation loophole of sorts. She is highly protected because she is the inheritor of Hylia's soul, which passes from generation to generation along her bloodline. She is typically the wielder of the Triforce of Wisdom, so the Loftwing represents Hyruleans as a whole because they were created in the image of the gods. And Zelda, much like Hylia, acts as the highest tier within that demographic's ranks. I told you earlier to remember the words goddesses, gods, and kami. Here's why. When deities are referred to in the Zelda series, only 2 words are used to describe those deities. Those words are Megami and Kami. Megami is used to denote a female deity, specifically in the context of Zelda lore. We only ever see this word tossed around in 2 Japanese Zelda games, 3 if you count the English versions, but that was mentioned in my last video. And those games are Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword. The word goddesses is used to describe the golden goddesses, and the title the goddess is used to denote the goddess Hylia. Now the word kami takes on a much different approach. We see it everywhere. It's in creation myths, it's in casual conversation, well, you get the point. This term has 3 genders, as its connotation can be either neutral or masculine. It's only once you begin to scrub the Japanese lore with a fine-tooth comb that you begin to see a distinction of deities in the details. And this is an important clarification because any spirit or creature that represents some sort of cosmic characteristic can be broadly painted as a kami. My go-to lore excerpt is from Lanayru the Light Spirit from Twilight Princess, who admits that 3 light spirits were dispatched by the gods. The light spirits are classified as kami, and yet these kami are somehow in servitude to other kami? The only way that adds up is if there is a pecking order to deities. It's the only way we can effectively conclude how this quote makes sense when translating to English. The Zelda from Ocarina of Time conveniently differentiates the 2 terms even further when she says that the 3 goddesses hid the Triforce, possessing the power of the gods somewhere in Hyrule, in the same sentence. This delicious word salad implies that Zelda is distinguishing the gods from the goddesses. But remember, she's not discussing the kami here, despite using the Japanese word to qualify as much, because remember the kami serve the gods, and by extension of that relationship, the kami also serve the goddess. Even the Great Deku Tree from Ocarina of Time is willing to mention the creation myth of the golden goddesses in his first breath, only to acknowledge the gods immediately following this legend when referencing Ganondorf's magically miscreant deeds. There are even special practices associated with guardian spirits, like offering a fish in order for Link to enter Lord Jabu Jabu. This harkens back to a practice of Shintoism known as kagura, or god entertainment. This is a ritual used in Shintoist practices to commune with the spirits of nature by offering items of nourishment like rice or fish. Once Link has offered a fish to Jabu Jabu, he may enter the guardian spirit and cleanse it of its parasitic demon. This solidifies my claim that the kami are their own separate classification of guardian spirits. I'll reference what I believe to be a neat example of a dynamic between the god tribe and the guardian spirits who serve them. Larulian historian shared an interesting quote with both Mox and myself, sourced from a developer's note from Creating a Champion. Goddess Hylia, laying the Master Sword to rest in the forest, gave off so much force that it gave birth to the great Deku Tree of Breath of the Wild. What can we glean from this? The Master Sword, the goddess Hylia's sacred blade of light, begets a kami, the Great Deku Tree. This is a demonstration of a direct relationship of the leader of the god tribe affecting the creation of a guardian deity. I'll push the envelope further. The kami tend to have spatial life force which they sustain. The Great Deku Tree of Ocarina of Time and its progeny, the Great Deku Tree of Wind Waker, both emit an area of effect spatial life force, if you will. This allows the Kokiri and the Koroks to thrive. The Kokiri are heavily dependent on this life force. If we were to literally break down the name of Kokiri from its Japanese roots, we see the words ko and ki, which quite literally mean children of the tree children. Consequently, the range of its ability to sustain the Kokiri becomes severely limited when the death curse is placed on the Great Deku Tree by Ganondorf. The limited spatial life force of the Great Deku Tree is why the Kokiri are told that if they leave the Kokiri forest, they will die. However, once Saria becomes a Sage of the Forest, and once the Deku Tree Sprout is born, the magnitude of this force allows the Kokiri to have the ability to leave their forest cage. This is why we see Koroks sowing seeds and watching over their creations in Wind Waker. The Deku Tree Sprout becomes the new Great Deku Tree, and with this metamorphosis, its spatial life force range has increased significantly. We can see a similar pattern with Valoo, the Kami of Dragon Roost Island. Understanding the implications of what a Kami can do has illuminated a mystery that has puzzled me since 2002. How do the Zora effectively become the Rito after less than 1,000 years? In a way, this guardian deity contributes to the surprisingly rapid evolution of the Zora, transforming them into the Rito. Something I learned while making this video is that the Zora are actually supposed to be in water at all times in Ocarina of Time. Jabu Jabu is what allows the seafaring race to be able to go out of the water for extended periods of time. We can see that the relationship between Valoo and the Rito is more substantial than we thought when observing that Valoo plays the integral role of granting the Rito their ability to fly once they become worthy, as seen when Prince Kamali obtains a scale from this guardian deity. We're going to cover the Sheikah and the God Tribe at the same time, because they play into each other. Back to our old friend Richard. Richard has a closed Sheikah eye. It's organic. I've said this before, but the Sheikah eye symbolizes this third eye with accuracy. We can see this not only with the image which they've chosen to represent their tribe, but also with the artifacts that they've manufactured. Take the Lens of Truth, for example, an item used to see barriers and things that the normal eye cannot perceive. The truth, with a capital T, is a philosophical concept relating to having the eyes of reality, which only God was capable of comprehending. In the God Tribe video, I explained that the eyelashes of the Sheikah eye represented the golden goddesses, but the eyelashes could also represent the Sheikah descending from an ancient magic-wielding race that was divided into three. The Sheikah would represent Nehru, as they were tasked by the goddess Hylia to protect her reincarnations, the Zeldas of the Zelda series. We can see their blue magic all over Breath of the Wild. For Din, we see the Yiga. The Yiga clan would represent the branch of Sheikah who resented the Kingdom of Hyrule for abolishing their advanced technology, a representation of power. The Yiga then chose to align their affiliation to a physical manifestation of that resentment, the Calamity Ganon. When we see the Yiga clan's magic in Breath of the Wild, it's red magic that affects matter directly. You can see a clear example of red-infused magic causing miniature earthquakes with this spell attack here. That just leaves one clan remaining to represent Ferore's green magic, the Zonai.
Oh, I see. Then you are the messenger to the sky. The Zonai use this green energy. As previously stated, this green energy is soul energy. Everywhere this green energy is associated with has to do with the souls of the living or the dead. This magic can only be used through items like the Dominion Rod and the Wind Waker because possession is kind of a dangerous magic. It is usually only permitted for the messenger to the heavens or to the sky. The item description of the Dominion Rod or the Copy Rod states, "By receiving light, the stone statue is given life and begins to move like its master." So essentially puppeteering. This could be incredibly dangerous in the wrong hands. The Dominion Rod is sealed within the Temple of Time in the past. However, there is another layer of complexity to this place Link finds this item. The Temple of Time seems to be adorned with the crest of light everywhere throughout the temple. This temple is accessed by the passage opened by the Master Sword, and projects this set of blue stairs, which is incredibly reminiscent of the technology from Breath of the Wild and the platforms within the Mirror Chamber and the Twilight Realm. This also suggests an alliance between multiple tribes to construct this temple. This is also in the past, so to me all these barriers suggest that there must be some kind of connection between the Zonai and the Sky People. Tears of the Kingdom Link uses a recall rune to shift time, harkening back to time shift stones found in the eras of antiquity. To me, this appears to be a Sheikah ability. Also, given that Pyrrha was focused on making a time reversal, which is why she appears to be a child in Breath of the Wild. I'm more or less interested in the other runes anyway. Now let's look at Fuse, for example. That ability allows one to effortlessly use strong goo to fuse weapons together. It also allows Link to select the thing on the ground with the thing in his hand using his other hand. The energy shoots out and picks up and glues everything together, while Ultra Hand is actually Link selecting an object in space and positioning it, gluing two items together. This also allowed Link to use that gyroscopic puzzle on the Great Sky Island. To me, they both appear to be forms of possession. Now let's talk about Ascend. This ability is teleportation at its finest, except this time, the player is actually experiencing the teleportation in real time. Look back to the portals in Twilight Princess. Now there are some differences between these that we have to take into account. First, the portals that were made in the world of light were corrupted versions of Twilight magic. Link defeated a few enemies within the bordered area, and this allowed the portal to turn back to that azure color that's everywhere. That black, dark square magic is still in the portal. This magic is what Ganondorf used to possess Zelda. Zant had enhanced powers from the Triforce of Power when these portals were made. Ascend feels like a more pure version of this magic. It's still gridded the same way as the portals of Twilight, just temporarily. Think more like the portal that Midna was able to cast at the end of dungeons. One thing to take into account is being in the world of Twilight may have an effect on their magic, meaning they wouldn't be able to assume the form of a dragon without being in the light world. So that brings me to Wind Waker. Not the game, the item. The Wind Waker is probably one of the most under-discussed things in the Zelda series. First off, it's white, which is kind of tied to divine nature in general. And Link only learns 6 songs.
My name is Fusion, the god of winds. So, you're the new wind messenger, huh?
Fusion and Raijin. Birthplace, Dragon Island. Light-hearted gods. They're brothers capable of commanding the wind. They teach Link the Song of the Wind and the Song of the Gales, respectively. Fusion, Wind God. Raijin, Thunder God. These songs are magical abilities that use the power of the wind and allow Link to teleport and control the direction of the wind. Also, not sure if the Song of Gales is meant to reference the Gale Boomerang, which could apparently have a kami within it. These two could possibly be the 2 heads of the dragon, seen on Tears of the Kingdom logo. I mean, they are wind kami. What do you think, Wiz?
Are they kami that are associated with the wind and therefore Ferore's green magic? Absolutely. Are they connected to the Zonai? Possibly. I think the double dragon Ouroboros is more so in line with Zelda accessing her ancient dragon divine form, calling back to what Hylia used to be. We see this in the Zelda theory videos brought to us by Gamesmiths, where it was first brought to my attention that Zelda, for the first time ever, had a noticeable change when her eyes were changed from the traditional blue to a new green color. And as I've said before, the colors representing dragon gods in ancient Japanese folklore are blue and green. I also think that this symbol could represent Link and his dragon arm, perhaps a former life that Link lived, and I'll tease this later on in the video.
The Song of Passing allows Link to pass time. The Earth God's lyric and the Wind God aria are played with Medley and Makar to open the stone seals. This one kind of reminds me specifically of how Link opens the royal family tomb. Finally, the Command Song. This song is special for many reasons. First off, to access the Command Song, Link has to access the Tower of the Gods. The Tower of the Gods is only raised after collecting the Gods' Pearls. This song is in a fortified location, again, very similar to Twilight Princess's Dominion Rod. The Wind Waker is given by the King of Red Lions. When he gives it to Link, he says, quote, "The tact that you have was used in the old days, when you led the sages like me and played a song that called for God, Kami-sama, meaning one God."
Wait, King Daphnis refers to Kami-sama? Now Mox, you're onto something. Kami-sama is a term reserved for the goddess Hylia specifically. The one god King Daphnis is addressing is in fact the goddess Hylia. This rectifies my statement from my last video when I said I was unable to find other examples of the term being used. I was only ever able to find this title of reverence in one Zelda game and one Zelda game only. This discovery is huge. No, it's beyond huge. I was under the impression that Hylia was only ever talked about in Skyward Sword, but now we know that she was alluded to as early as 2002. I don't know what's going on with these rhymes in 2002, but I'm onto something. The Lou 2002, alluded to 2002. I'm on a roll. Seriously, I made this voice recording just to tell you this. When we were lurking hard in the Zelda forums of old, Hylia was under our noses the whole time. Why didn't I want to learn foreign languages as a kid? This could have saved me so much trouble. Okay, back to me and the Sheikah Eye. The tier of the Sheikah Eye represents the Sheikah people. We can see this relationship more clearly when looking at young Impa from Skyward Sword. There is a huge emphasis on this tier in both the young and old versions of this Impa. This probably symbolizes the sorrow felt within the god tribe when Hylia ultimately had to make the difficult decision to sacrifice her divine dragonly form to become Hyrulean. This sacrifice allowed her not only to be able to use the Triforce, it also set the events of Skyward Sword in motion, as Hylia knew Link's love for Zelda would grant him the impetus to complete his quest of forging both the Master Sword and the Triforce in order to defeat Demise, the Conqueror of Time. This just leaves us with the Eye of the Sheikah Eye symbol. As I've said before, this is what represents the God Tribe. This is a clan whom the Sheikah serve throughout each generation, in order to protect Zelda and save Hyrule time and time again. If you go into the Earth Temple of Skyward Sword, you can actually see that homage is being paid to the god's clan. First, Link must enter the temple along a path shaped like a serpent. This serpent can be taken as an ancient symbol of the dragons, as serpents were thought to have been ancestors of dragons. The next figures I would like to point out within the Earth Temple are these statues right here. These statues have 3 eyes, just like Richard. An opened third eye historically represented enlightenment, or breaking from the cycle of samsara, the cycle of life and death and reincarnation, in Buddhism. Accompanying these 3-eyed statues are the 8-spoked Dharma wheels, which only strengthens this argument. I'll leave you with a few questions to keep you pondering while you wait for Tears of the Kingdom, or even my next video. Do you remember the first words out of Demise's mouth when he sees Link? He says,
"So, boy, you are the goddess's knight then."
He then looks up at Zelda and back at Link before making another remark.
Intriguing. How pathetic.
Implying that Hylia was way more magnificent than what Zelda looks like. Demise speaks as if he's already aware that Hylia would have a knight. What do you think this means? So this video was a ton of fun to make. If this isn't your first time here, you already know the drill. If this video provided value, please give it a like. If you want to contribute to the conversation, please leave a comment. And definitely try force a click on that subscribe button, followed by the bell. I plan on taking this conversation further, especially once we have even more revelatory information from Tears of the Kingdom. A huge thank you to Larulian Historian for his translations and insights. To Banoon, Moxie's researcher and copy editor, we couldn't have done it without either of you. And a huge shout out, these are never gonna end, to Z Hyrule Fantasy for helping me and Mox with editing some gaps in between on this really long video. Z Hyrule, go check his channel out as well. Gonna list a thumbnail here. Obviously gonna list his channel in the description, but that is not enough. Definitely go and check him out too. And of course, thank you to Moxie Watts for joining me. And congratulations, Moxie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast. Okay, I'm gonna go get married now. Bye.
Take care, Moxie. And one of my subscribers, Bradley Kane. Hey, Bradley. Good to see you. I'll see you in the comments. Bradley gifted me money so I could buy an extra copy of Tears of the Kingdom. Now, here's the deal. I will be giving away that free copy of Tears of the Kingdom, but only my subscribers are eligible, and you happen to comment on this video. If you happen to go over to Moxie's video as well, which I will show you the thumbnail for right here, and you comment on that, make sure you say something along the lines of, "Wiz sent me." You will have an extra chance at winning a free copy of Tears of the Kingdom. So please go and support Moxie as well. She just got married. She could use all the extra love in addition to that, and that's what we're all about. We're all about building each other up. Shoutouts to both Zinc and GameSmiths for their spectacular voice acting. I could not have asked for better voice acting, in all honesty. Keep an eye out for collaborations with both of those guys soon. And maybe even GameSmiths very soon. Wink, wink, hush, hush. This is just a huge shout out page because I'm beyond grateful for these people. Also for Banoon, please keep in mind that in addition to research, she also makes homemade crafts, like Etsy style. If I'm saying that correctly, Banoon, feel free to correct me. So please go follow her socials. I will link those as well. Thank you for listening to my spiel. This is Wiz. I'm gonna go catch some lightning. We'll see you in the next one.